Welcome to the webinar. Today, it's about navigating landscape of strategy planning and execution in the era of transformation. Again, my name is Luis Borromeo. I am the community manager here at the KPI Institute, and today we'll reveal insights from the State of Strategy Management Practice and the 2024 report. And we'll debate challenging dilemmas related to business planning, performance management, framework, strategy execution with our special guest. But firstly, a few words about the KPI Institute. So we are a global leader in strategy and performance management research. We are committed in setting industry standards and sharing best practices through various platforms and publications. So with over 20 years of advisory experiences, we've trained over 29,000 professionals globally, and we have published 80 management research reports alongside with our partner, so Systems. This is our consulting unit, specializing in business management across multiple platforms. Together, we bring a wealth of experience to help organizations achieve business excellence. So continuing on, so the KPI Research Institute, as you can see, has made significant strides globally with over 400 staff members across 4 major offices. We've delivered educational programs for more than 60 countries, with our research span as a diverse range of sectors, from business to government KPIs. The global reach gives us a unique perspective in shaping strategy, performance management, and standards across industries. So, what is our agenda for today? So, what can you expect from this meeting? We'll begin with a comparison of deliberate versus emergent strategic planning, followed by a deep dive into 2 major performance success from failure in strategy execution. After this discussion, we'll open the floor for a Q&A session where you can engage directly with our experts. Okay, so who will be our experts for today? So joining us today, we have 2 exceptional professionals. We have Cristina Mihailoaie, the Chief Operating Officer at the KPI Institute, and Bori Pentek, a management consultant at Systems. Together, they'll provide valuable insights throughout today's session. So before I give the floor to them, just some information about our speakers. So let's start with Bori. Bori is a management consultant specializing in organizational development and human resource management. She helps businesses align their strategies, processes, practices with their core values, focusing on human and social well-being. With experience in recruitment, human resource, and operations management across different sectors like sustainable construction, research, education, Bori emphasizes improving employee well-being, fostering inclusive cultures, and ensuring that organizations are resilient and socially responsible. So she develops solutions that address systematic challenges and support long-term successes. As part of a collaboration, she is also with the Mihailoaie University, where she teaches subjects like research methodology, intercultural communication, and self-awareness. So give a hand to Bori. Hi, Bori.
Hi, everyone. Glad to be here.
Thank you. Now we have Cristina. So she is bringing 12 years of experience in strategy and performance management as a researcher, trainer, and advisor. She has contributed to the development of best practices and standards on how to use and leverage KPIs in organization through research, publication, academic articles, and educational programs. Advocating for impactful strategy planning and performance measurement practices, she has been advising organizations from the US, Europe, the Middle East, and training executive across a variety of functional areas and industries. Currently, Cristina is also leading the KPI Institute's research division, tackling on a daily basis, and she challenges the linking of operations to strategy. So we have Cristina. Hi, Cristina.
Hello, Luis and Buddy. It's nice to be here with you today. Good morning or good afternoon to our audience. I'm happy that you have joined and that you have taken the time during the week to attend this discussion. I think it proves that you are dedicated to continuous improvement of practices, doing better strategy, doing better performance measurement. And this is, I think it aligns perfectly with our mission here at the KPI Institute. Okay, I'm going to switch now to my screen so that we can get into the subject, right? Okay. I think it's visible.
Yes, it is visible.
Well, I'm excited. I'm excited today because I get to share with you our latest research product, the State of Strategy Management Practice Report. It's dedicated to the MENA region, to MENA organizations. Our study includes 24 topics ranging from strategy planning methods to KPI relevancy, triggers for strategy failures, organizational agility, even AI usage for business planning activities. The survey statistics are presented along with insights from top leaders in organizations and advice from our specialists to overcome challenges. And for this, I must express my appreciation to the practitioners who partnered with us in developing this publication. Now, as of the moment, the report is available on the KPIs Institute marketplace. Several statistics, very few actually, given the time limitations, will be shared in this presentation. And the full study will be emailed to everyone attending the webinar and those who have registered, along with our recording today, because I see someone asked us in the chat. Let's dive into our discussion. The first dilemma we would like to tackle and debate with my friend and colleague here, Borin, is about deliberate or emergent strategy planning. I would like to start with some statistics so that we have the context for the discussion. According to the data that we've just collected and part of the report I was mentioning, if we're looking into the MENA region, we see that 39% of organizations claim to have a formal and regular strategy planning process, but no specific methodology on how to run it. And this is predominantly for the services sector. About 37 have both a formal process and a methodology in place, most commonly in manufacturing organizations. And as for informal planning, 24% of our respondents claim that planning happens somehow naturally in your organization. It's not necessarily organized. And this is specific in professional services and business consulting more specific. Now, if we look at the big picture, it tells us that 76 of professionals are claiming to have a formal and regular strategy planning process. And we also know that a little over 50% of them say that they review strategy annually or every 3 years. Now, with these statistics, I can conclude that in the MENA region, the predominant practice is what we know as deliberate strategy planning. Deliberate strategy planning is when strategy happens as part of an organized, systematic, and regular process. Traditionally, it's triggered by the top management, right there at the top, and it's being cascaded to lower organizational levels. It is the annual business planning that most of us are familiar with. On the other hand, we also have the concept of emergent strategy planning. This is when strategy results as unplanned actions, maybe because we identify an opportunity, maybe because we're facing a threat and we need to react. And the trigger for this can come, and it usually comes from it can come from any layer of the organization, but it tends to come from the middle to the top. That's how the information usually flows, because it comes from employees who are close to the client, to the market, or maybe they work in core operations. Now, while deliberate strategy is more focused, or it's more on has like a tunnel focus on what we want to achieve, emergent strategy is outlining and it's emphasizing the importance of developing a very good peripheral site. However, the two of them are not mutually exclusive. Now, according to the Harvard business professor here, being successful with a deliberate strategy is quite a complicated problem. And I don't think he's the only one stating this. I think it's something that we can all relate to. But why? What makes a deliberate strategy complicated in terms of executing it in practice? What do you think about it, Bori?
Thank you, Cristina. So I also think deliberate strategy is it's complicated to achieve success with it, mostly because it offers an illusion of stability that is just not there anymore in the external environment or the internal environment. We all know that change is the new normal. So this tunnel vision that Cristina mentioned, it makes success complicated. A lot of things have to work very well for a deliberate strategy to work. And one of the things, and the most important thing that needs to be almost perfect, is the governance of the organization. So it requires a really, really robust governance to be able to collaboratively create a strategy, get on board, ensure that rigorous methodology, the formal processes, the capabilities, the tools, and the techniques that support this, and make sure that everybody who goes to work every day understands how they contribute to strategy. And I know we keep mentioning this, the engagement of employees with the strategy, but without a robust governance, it's really difficult to achieve that. And no amount of formalization of a strategy will replace the understanding and the engagement of the people who work to make that strategy a reality. So overall, creating the system is very difficult. Monitoring it, ensuring that employees understand it, it's also a challenge. Selecting the right KPIs that measure the success, understanding what success means in terms of that strategy is also a challenge. But most importantly, assuming that the internal and the external environment are going to be stable in that year when we are implementing the strategy is, let's just say, not wise. So I would say that the governance and the volatility is what makes deliberate strategy difficult, and achieving success through it a bit of a challenge.
Cristina, you're muted.
Thank you. If we're looking at what our respondents listed as challenges in strategy planning, you will see here, I'm just going to mark on the top three. The top three difficulties that they mentioned also relate a bit to what Bori was saying, that it is difficult to set up this formal and rigorous process. So it seems like organizations are struggling with a methodic strategic planning process that actually adds value to the organization. Secondly, selecting the KPIs. So selecting the KPIs shows up here. If we're talking about strategy planning, you will see a few slides later. It shows up also in the questions related to performance measurement. And thirdly, they also they find it difficult to conduct the market analysis, the external environment analysis. So these are some of the challenges that organizations are struggling with in planning. If I am to go deeper, you see that also getting buy-in from the executive team is quite a challenge, and engaging other stakeholders in the process as well. I'm passing back to you, Bori, if you have other thoughts about when should we do the deliberate strategy, or when should we do emergent strategy?
Okay, so just to recap a little bit what you said, deliberate strategy is basically everything formal, everything created to achieve the tunnel vision that we want to get closer to our goals. So that is basically, you think about you as an organization, you think about what you're good at, you plan how your strengths can contribute to your goals, and you set the rules of the game. Basically, imagine this as a very rigorous personal routine. So I want to achieve that, and I'm going to do all that. All my actions are going to be aligned to achieving that. Emergent strategy, on the other hand, is basically every unplanned pattern of action that naturally develops over time due to curiosity, due to a response to the environment, and just innovation and just playing around with the rules. So this strategy is not formal and not restricted by these formalities. It's just what happens as a result of testing and learning and curiosity. So one example of an emergent strategy could be YouTube. I don't know if you know, but YouTube started as a dating site. And the video option was there so that people can upload their video introductions. But when they checked in the first iterations of uploads, okay, what is the profile of people and videos that we get? They realized that people mostly upload their usual home videos to show to their friends. And they pivoted. So they said, okay, let's just use this platform and let's just strategize with this platform the way that people use it. So this kind of pivot is what makes YouTube currently the world's largest video sharing platform. A more theoretical example could be, imagine a clothing company that is aiming to reduce waste. How do they do it? If they want to do it deliberately, they are going to select a strategy. They're going to create a strategy, a sustainability strategy in this case, set up KPIs to measure some strategic initiatives and look back after half a year and then look back after a year and see, did we contribute to waste reduction? While an emergent option is just everybody's doing day-to-day and somebody is, I had a little bit more time on my hands and I just experimented and just trialed a little bit of my ideas with the fabric, and I realized taking the leftover fabric can create a new product. So this is somebody trial and error, trying out things and then going to the manager, okay, here, I have a new idea. So as you can see, one of it is rigorous and the other is it's more playful, based on curiosity. So to answer the question, Cristina, on which one works best, as you said, both of them have different functions. Traditional planning with a deliberate strategy functions very well when an organization is mature and stable, and like I said before, they have the governance mechanisms in place to support. When the industry and the external environment are not very volatile, this would mean that there exists some sort of stability to keep all actions aligned towards that goal. There are no major disruptions. When the strategy planning process is rigorous and can create a good strategy plan, a well-articulated strategy plan, it's also good to use traditional plannings when you have the capabilities for this. Also, what is very important is top-down and bottom-up communication and the speed of it. So if you're playing by the rules, all decisions or most decisions are going through these top-down and bottom-up layers. So your alignment and your communication needs to be really good. And overall, no matter what strategy do you use, communication is everything. Communication is what leads the way. So in this case, top-down and bottom-up communication is the key. So these are basically the occasions when traditional planning can function very well. Emergent planning, on the other hand, you can see it mostly, or not mostly, but you can see it often in startups when the organization is at their early stages and their direction is not clear, but everybody is really on board. So if you work in a startup, you know that we want to achieve something, we want to contribute to the world, we are curious and we are trying to experiment, but we don't really have rules. In this kind of scenario, when the external environment is volatile and there are big changes externally and internally, it's also good to give some space to emergence. If the organization is struggling to adapt to changes, which means that it's slow in terms of top-down, bottom-up communication, might it might be good to offer some space for emergence once again. If the culture is really well, and in startups you can see that the culture is usually like focused on innovation and not very much on rules, there is a lot of employee empowerment that happens there. And emergent strategy is very empowering. Your opinions being heard, you being able to contribute, you show opportunities as an employee. It's really helpful. So emergent strategies can work very well in this kind of environment. And as I mentioned, no matter which planning you choose, communication needs to be really good. Top-down in case of traditional planning is a must. In case of emergent planning, top-down is necessary, but what happens in the field, the horizontal alignment and communication, the communication between certain key people is also very important. So in conclusion, I would say things are never black and white. So we generally suggest to adopt both and leverage the strengths of both. So what I suggest usually is take a step back in the opposite direction than where you are now. So if you're extremely formalized and you notice that maybe communication doesn't work as well as it should, you can take a step back and see where you can offer space for emergence. If you're very volatile and excited and curious, but you don't really have rules, take a look back at the last quarter, see what was stable among all the instability, what was stable, and try to start to formalize it a little bit. So overall, basically take a step towards the other direction to make sure that you're balanced and not just putting all of your money on one technique or one type of strategy.
As you were giving us examples earlier of different companies, and I think we have quite a variety of case studies or brands we can look at that show how emergent strategies actually became deliberate strategies in the end, and they were actually converted into a business model. And I was thinking now about IKEA, the furniture brand, which is well known nowadays for customers who go and pick up the product directly from the warehouse. But this was never an intention, just like with YouTube. It was a response to a situation of overcrowded store, which resulted to this action, and it eventually became part of the operating model. So I think that what you're trying to tell us also, and I support you in that, is that what we have to do, regardless of the maturity, if we are a mature company, we have to start creating the premises for emergent strategy to happen as well. Make room for adaptation. It doesn't mean that you have to jump from one extreme to another, but for sure, if we want to tackle why the liver strategy is not really working perfectly at the moment, given the business context and the dynamics nowadays, I think this can be one answer to it. Try to balance the two of them in your approach. Now, we could have a whole webinar dedicated just to this topic. If you have any questions on the topic, drop them down in the chat, and we'll try to take as much as possible from the questions at the end in the Q&A section. We're moving now to another topic that, as a trainer, I come across this question very often. Which one works better? Should we implement a balanced scorecard, or should we implement an OKR framework in the company? Very briefly, I want to set up some characteristics of these two frameworks to make sure we all have the same understanding and knowledge on it. If we're talking about the balanced scorecard, it emerged in the 90s, and it's well known and still used today. Its trademark structure is that it balances financial, customers, internal processes, and people and learning and growth. It balances these four perspectives to define and monitor strategy. And nowadays, if you look a bit into the latest literature on the topic, you will find also adaptations of the balanced scorecard to consider the ESG, right, and sustainability matters. Traditionally, the balanced scorecard promotes an alignment from the top to the bottom, cascading objectives and KPIs to operations, even cascaded at the individual levels. On the other hand, we have the objectives and key results methodology. The system became widely known more recently. Well, recently, I would say 5 to 10 years, not so recently now. And it's an agile framework to manage the business using objectives and key results. It emphasizes on engaging bottom up, from the bottom to the top, to ensure alignment of objectives and results. Key results can be and should be KPIs, but other types of results are accepted as well. It advocates the usage of 3 to 5 objectives, which makes it a much simplified type of framework. And obviously, it will require less resources to manage such a system compared to the balanced scorecard. A balanced scorecard, only the corporate balanced scorecard, given the 4 perspectives, it can probably reach 20 to, in some cases, even 30 KPIs. The OKRs work on quarterly cycles of performance review and adjustments, so it's much more dynamic. We see it oftentimes in these organizations that also employ other agile methodologies. And it promotes ambitious or shoot for the moon targets with 50% chance of achievement, which is not something that you would necessarily see in a balanced scorecard system. What we have seen in the MENA region is that the balanced scorecard is the most widely used tools. 40% of our respondents listed it as part of their organization. The objectives and key results is slowly picking up. Last year, the percentage was 21%, and now is 34%. So we see these 13 percentage points increase. And I also noticed that 1/3 of organizations claim not to have a formal performance management system. So I think that for the MENA region, it outlines an area for improvement, for continuous growth in here. And there has been, especially if I'm thinking about countries like the UAE, Saudi Arabia, in which the usage and integration of these tools has met a spectacular increase lately. When asked about challenges, regardless of their practices or formality of the system, KPI selection stays at the top. 32% of respondents claim to be struggling with this. Aligning KPIs and targets across the organization, collecting performance result data collection for KPIs is also there at the top. Do you think, and I'm addressing the question out to body, do you think that the choice of the framework, whether it's a balanced scorecard or an OKRs framework, has any impact on these challenges? And what do you think it's better? Should we use balanced scorecard? Should we use OKRs? What are your thoughts on this?
Thank you. So I would say, irrespective of whether you use balanced scorecard or OKRs, you're going to have a challenge, as you can see from the statistics. And again, these have been the statistics for a few years now. Aligning and selecting the indicators, whether those are KPIs or OKRs, it's going to be a challenge, but it's going to be a different kind of challenge for the different systems. So balanced scorecard works best in mature organizations, and you can see a parallel between deliberate strategy with balanced scorecard, emergent strategy, and OKRs. So balanced scorecard works best in mature organizations. They have the resources in order to implement this and in order to monitor this. They have the processes and the support tools that they need, whether that is technology or agile processes or any kind of infrastructure. If they have it, and if they have a good governance, good roles that are separated, everybody knows what they have to do, how they can contribute, the balanced scorecard can be very, very useful in looking at interdependencies. because it's clustered into these clusters that Cristina mentioned, and it is cascaded across the organization, it can be very good in seeing even small detours from the plan. So overall, mature organizations who have resources allocated and have clear governance, that those are the ones that can benefit from using balanced scorecard. OKRs, on the other hand, are more about ensuring accountability on an individual level. So it's about how each employee in the organization is moving the needle towards the common vision while having some freedom, accountability, and definitely ambition. So this is about transparency around who does what and who aspires for what, because OKRs are usually inspiring. OKRs also ensure a little bit quicker thinking because they can be reset and revisited more than we do usually with KPIs. So OKRs are suited for startups and organizations that operate in more volatile or more dynamic environments. And it is about empowering employees. So once again, basically we can say that neither of these can replace each other completely. Generally, we recommend the personalization of the system. So it's not about selecting one system and just going along with it. It's about leveraging the strengths of each system by thinking wisely about where they can be used. So one way that you can personalize your system can be through hierarchical integration. So balanced scorecard on an organizational level, it works really well to measure overall business performance and the alignment to the strategy. There's a deliberate strategy. OKRs can be implemented on lower levels, like team levels or individual levels that are focusing on specific strategic initiatives and are aspiring to do something big, something meaningful, or they need maybe a lot of freedom, and that's why. This ensures that teams are aligned with the broader goals that are measured through the scorecard, but they also have accountability and certain autonomy in the how. This is one way to do it. The other way is to get creative and do a personalized integration that is based on the needs of each capability in your organization. So you can customize the system by using KPIs and the balanced scorecard in teams and for individuals and for departments that have more repetitive tasks, who need to look back at the end of each month and say, okay, did I achieve what I planned? And use OKRs that for teams and individuals that might have more ambitious goals or more qualitative goals, and where precise targets are maybe difficult to define. So you can use OKRs for flexibility and KPIs for measurable quantitative outcomes. So generally, as I said, the key takeaway of this is to try to leverage the strengths of each of these systems.
Thank you. I want to add something on what you shared with us earlier about one of the fears that happens if we would go and implement the system. You told us earlier, some teams with balanced scorecards, some teams with OKRs. One of the things that is going to happen in this type of framework is that integration might be a bit more challenging to achieve. So what I'm trying to say is that if you this can work on a rather decentralized type of system, but if you want to do that type of identical cascading, right, when you have the targets at the top and you make a perfect breaking down at all levels from the top to the bottom, then for sure you need the same type of framework. Or if you integrate them, you have to integrate them vertically. Balanced scorecard at the top, OKRs at the bottom. But if you go with the second example given, then that type of cascading alignment is not possible. It will require predominantly to do an alignment through contribution. So I don't have a sales target and then I perfectly break it down. Sales for division A, sales for division B, for the different branches. But when I'm talking about contribution, I'm talking about I have this objective about to expand to a new market, and then each department is going to have to figure it out what's their direct or indirect contribution to that. So the latter example offered by you, Mori, I think it would fit best if you have a very good a competency within the company to ensure that type of alignment. But nevertheless, I think that you can always take the key principles from each and apply. A key principle that I would take is the fact that the balance scorecard tells us to look on those 4 areas. So you could still do that, even if you don't want to follow the balance scorecard system. What I like about the OKRs is that introduction of ambitious targets, shoot for the moon, which steers creativity. So the organization could commit, and each department could commit to have at least one target that is shoot for the moon, that will take them outside the comfort zone as well. And in the end, is about combining the system with the culture. If you have an organization that is highly centralized and you want to take a step further into more agility and more fluid and continuous performance management, then you can start with this first step. Try to use OKRs as part of the employee performance management system. They can be easily linked to the balance scorecard of the department, and that's the first step that can be taken. Moving further, as culture adapts, because the more agile the system is, the more autonomy and empowerment is needed for employees. And that's a shift of mentality, that's a shift of procedures, that is a process that might take more than 1 year to successfully achieve. Okay, our last dilemma. Success versus failure in strategy execution in particular. There are so many research studies outlining usually high strategy failure rates, and it seems like no one really found a secret ingredient or tool to make strategy work perfectly. However, I trust that in this next minutes, we can bring into your attention some of the key drivers for success to enable you to do a better execution, maybe for the plans that you're currently scheduling. Our data indicates that the top 3 challenges or the top 3 reasons why strategy fails in MENA organizations relate to, firstly, ineffective cross-functional collaboration. It was there last year, but now it's on the first position. Lack of leadership support. And the third position is occupied equally by slow decision-making and insufficient resources to implement the projects. Moving forward, we just picked the first 2 aspects to talk about, given the limits, the time limitation of the webinar. I'm going to tell you more on cross-functional collaboration, how we can do better on that. And then I'm going to leave Bori to tell you about leadership, because that's closer to both her research area and a topic that is close to her heart. Cross-functional collaboration can be improved, but we have to work on 2 streams, the technical side and then also the culture. On the technical side, you can introduce the usage of shared objectives at corporate level. They can have a positive impact on collaboration. A shared objective is an objective whose achievement requires the involvement of 2, 3 or more functional areas. However, if you use them, make sure that this shared objective doesn't have a shared ownership. Appoint specifically one owner. It can be one of the departments that is involved in the realization of this objective, or if that's not feasible, then you would put the chief operating officer to be responsible for that objective, making sure that the parties involved are going to work together to be reached. Another thing that I feel is a bit overlooked in terms of strategy planning is the way we choose to do the alignment. Instead of having the corporate strategy ready and then it's being explained and handed over to the heads, and they have to come up with their functional area plans, I would facilitate cross-functional collaboration in dedicated workshops. The strategy office can handle that and mediate these workshops in which functional areas with high and strong interdependencies are going to get together there discuss and negotiate their targets and their functional area plans to the benefit of the organization rather their own agendas. Oftentimes, this alignment happens in silos. Each of them are working individually. Of course, maybe they talk, maybe they don't talk, but facilitate this way of working. Put them in a room and put there a mediator to make sure that they don't have conflicting objectives, conflicting targets, and they're all working towards the greater good, as I said, of the company overall, and not their direct interest to make their functional department look good, to be there and have a good visibility. From another technical point of view, you must make sure that your reward system, compensations, remuneration, bonuses, they are truly aligned with the behavior you want. If you want cross-functional collaboration, because that is key for strategy execution, then I need to promote teamwork. But if your bonus system rewards individual target achievement predominantly, if you have a very strong competitive culture, individualism, this is going to erode the culture of collaboration that you're actually looking to create. You will also like to verify if there is clarity around governance and decision-making. You want to balance control with autonomy. Now, when we're talking now about control, management for control nowadays, especially for in the context of the young Generation Z, it sounds bad. It sounds like a negative thing to do. But strategy execution doesn't happen in chaos, especially if you are a larger organization. Okay, it's easy to coordinate if we are 10, 20 people, but if you're 200, 2,000, 20,000, so you need a certain level of control, balanced with appropriate autonomy, right? And what I'm trying to say here is that oftentimes teams are not clear about the boundaries of their authority and decision-making, especially when they're part of these cross-functional projects. So make sure that's very clear. Now, on the soft side of things, is the organizational system designed for collaboration? And what I'm thinking here is the CEO from Spotify mentioned the importance of creating an environment that is optimized for speed and autonomy. And it provides teams the freedom to self-organize around the work rather than procedurize everything. So what I'm trying to say here is that if you want collaboration, you need to make sure that the work processes and the procedures are designed or provide the flexibility to do so. Give them space so that they identify the work that they need to be done. We know who needs to do it, and then we have some freedom to choose how we're going to work around that. My last point, but not the less important one for sure, is build a culture. The way we work. The unwritten rules, actually, nurture the right rituals. And I really like this word rituals, because when you say process, it's like the processes very quickly get obsolete. Our operating model can get very quickly obsolete. But let's talk about rituals. Rituals is what we do and how we do it. And it's not about necessarily the procedure. It is more about how people come together and then get things done. So the wrong rituals, the right rituals would be to connect rather than work in silos, to have regular meetings to discuss performance, to discuss KPIs, to question and to challenge ourselves in a good way, to preach transparency and togetherness in terms of problem solving rather than, keeping everything there at the top and strategy being just for the ivory tower, where it gets to be discussed, debated, and solved. So since I got to this subject of culture, let us hear more about leadership and how they can support in strategy execution.
Thank you. And I think they are very closely related, not just with the culture, but with cross-functional collaboration, and leadership is very intertwined in that sense. And this also shows in the chat, I saw a comment. Okay, now I can't open it. But it was something about leaders are still making quick decisions. Even though we have a deliberate strategy, they're still making quick decisions. And this point touches on that a little bit. My first point actually closely touches on this comment. I would say lead by example. So if you want success in strategy, lead by example. Very bluntly put, the leader is the example, is the embodiment of what people can get away with. They're the benchmark of what people can get away with. So if you have a deliberate strategy and your leader is making decisions outside of the strategy, but punishing people for making decisions outside of the strategy, there is something wrong there. If you as a leader set some rules for quick feedback, set an SLA for feedback, but then you don't respond to people's questions within that time frame, once again, there is a problem. There is a major roadblock in strategy execution. Because again, no matter how formalized things are, people are in that system. So leaders should be the first to embrace new ways of working, the first to respect the rules of the game that they set collaboratively with their team. So leading by example is the top. Allowing and learning from mistakes is another factor that I consider very important. So no matter what kind of strategy to have, whether that is deliberate or emergent, whether you are using scorecards or OKRs, embracing a culture of learning is very important. And it's very uncomfortable. Even when I lead teams, it's very uncomfortable to allow mistakes. But allowing to learn from mistakes implicitly means allowing mistakes. When employees are encouraged to take risks within reason, of course, but to be innovative and to take risks, they can do more. When employees are terrified of making a mistake, they might not make mistakes, that's good, but they also probably won't make innovation. So it is really important to create a safe space for learning and for making mistakes. Another factor I would say is the balance between accountability and approachability. So leaders need to hold people accountable, that is for sure, but they should also be open to feedback. It is always a back and forth game, and it will never work if it's just one-sided. So always and never are things that we should not say. So I'm going to say generally it is recommended to be accountable but approachable and create that balance. Now, a little bit less on the idealist side. Every time I talk about leadership, I feel that I am becoming an idealist by the second. So let's get back on earth and talk about resource allocation, because it's also the responsibility of the leader to allocate resources effectively. So whether that is financial resources, human capital, or time, or technology, or some tools, ensuring that there are adequate resources for the strategy is very important. So this means if I have major plans for my strategy, I need to allocate resources adequately. And it is me as the leader who is responsible for that. It is me as the leader who has an overview of the whole system. And in the same time, back to accountability, leaders need to be looking at that system and establish and maintain organizational controls. So from the bottom up, it's very hard to see an overview of the whole system. Top leaders are the ones who do have this overview or should have this overview. And they are the ones who are not supposed to look within everybody's to-do list, because that's already inside of the system. But they're supposed to look at the system and see, do we need any additional controls there? Is there something that is obsolete and can be changed? So maintaining these organizational controls is something that the leaders are definitely responsible for. So to wrap it up, leading by example, allowing to learn from mistakes, reach a balance between accountability and approachability, allocate resources effectively, but also aligned with the strategy, and establishing and maintaining organizational controls. These are the top 5 that I would say, the top 5 factors through which leaders can support a good strategy execution.
Thank you. Yeah, everything sounds very, very neat and clear in theory, and it gets so messy in practice. But the important thing is to keep trying, right? Like you said earlier, try and or you try again, and then eventually you get it right. That's also in terms of personal growth at individual level, but also for the organization overall. I would like to leave you with a key takeaway about successful strategy execution. I think it relies on clear focus, right? Making strategy clear and aware to everyone, on quality leadership and effective cross-functional collaboration. And these three elements can thrive if we put the right people with the right tools in the right environment. And I think someone actually mentioned, left a comment about doing the right things. So it's mostly on that direction. Thank you for your attention. We are well aware that each and every one of these three topics deserves an event in itself, and hopefully we can get the chance to dedicate that if it also aligns with your interests. I am excited now to move into the question section because we talked a lot. So I want to hear what is on your mind. Luis, back to you to help us with the questions.
All right. Thank you. So we've covered a lot of ground today, from the differences between deliberate and emergent strategic planning, to the framework that will guide us successfully in execution. Now, like what our speaker said, I would like to hear from you. So we'll start with a selection of questions that were sent to you in advance. And then after that, we'll take 2 to 3 questions from the audience. So we already received over 40 questions before the event. And, as we are committed in answering all of them, rest assured that if it's not being addressed here right now, we'll be writing it to you and addressing it to you via email. So we'll start with the first question that was sent in advance. So let me just open it up. Okay. So this is for Bori. So the first question is, how can we solve the old saying that culture eats strategy for breakfast?
Yeah, I love this question. Thank you. First of all, yes, I agree. Culture eats strategy for breakfast. And I think the concept of culture has been prevalent in this webinar as well, as we try to explain the differences between certain dilemmas. But my question is, which part of the strategy does the culture eat first? And why? So this would mean that you need to feel into the culture because if culture eats strategy for breakfast, that means that there is a gap between culture and strategy. So why is there this gap? What are the behaviors, what are the values of the people who work in the organization that are not in alignment with the organizational values and the organizational goals? So this would mean, in order to solve this dilemma, we need to map the organizational beliefs and values and then implement, slowly but steadily, some experimental changes through trial and error. So this is who I think I am as an entity, and these are who the people in the entity think they are. Where is the gap? How does it manifest on a day-to-day basis? So this is how I think we can gradually, slowly align the culture with a deliberate strategy. So that culture doesn't eat strategy for breakfast, but it's rather supporting the strategy. That's what I would say that is the key to solving it. But really great question. I hope that the person who asked it is here at the webinar.
All right, thank you. Next one, this is for Cristina. So in your experience, what is the most underestimated factor that determines whether a strategy will succeed or fail in execution? It's a 2-pronged question. So how do you ensure it is adequately addressed from the planning stage?
I'm gonna share 2 factors very quickly. Firstly, I think we overlook the importance of what not to do as part of strategy planning. So in strategy planning, we have to identify what we will do, but also what is no longer needed. How can we organize work in this new context of the strategy? And we have to take out the unnecessarily activities that are eating away our time and energy. I hear a lot managers asking, how do we manage everyday work and strategy? But here's the thing. We show up every day to actually play our role in strategy, to do strategy, right? To implement the strategy, not to do strategy, but to implement the strategy. So when we align our activities with strategy, you shouldn't have this problem. You shouldn't have this dilemma, this struggle about how am I managing everyday stuff with strategic projects and what needs to be done this year. So that's one first thing. The other fact that I think it's overlooked is we forget that strategy execution, I think it's about people. It's about people more than it is about the other technical issues. It's about discipline and it's about focus. And all leadership levels, not just those at the top, all of them have to be part of the solution. And by this, I mean they have to be involved in developing the strategy so that they can fully understand it and own it, commit to it. Otherwise, they will become part of the problem. And intentionally or non-intentionally, they will end up blocking the progress. Now, the problem is that you cannot properly, I don't think it's humanly possible. I don't think you can really engage properly all of these stakeholders, especially in a large organization, in such a short time frame of the traditional annual planning that we have. So this is why I think to address this issue of engaging more the people, we have to move from the one time per year planning process to a continuous strategy planning, to a process that is rather continuous. I'm not saying we don't have to do the annual planning anymore. What I'm saying is that there are some limitations to that process, and maybe it happens for most of you at this time of the year. It's the last quarter of the year. We have a lot of work with projects to be finished, with clients. It's an intense time. And then we have the planning. And then we have to go to all of these many steps that we have to do for the planning. And it feels like everyone is rushing and we're getting people in the meeting, but we're tired. I don't think we have, let's see, the right energy all the time to properly engage. And I'm talking now just the top management. So if you want to go wider than that, you definitely need something else. So why not start building for the premises for emergent strategy and try to engage more people into solving the critical problems for the organization, into telling us how they see the future of the company, how we can take some opportunities, how we can manage more overall as an organization and less the small team that at the top.
All right. Thank you. Okay. So for our last pre-sent question, again, I'm going back to Bori. When it comes to incorporating emergent strategies in the long-term plans, how do you do it without discarding the current plans?
Thank you. So I have to reflect back to what Cristina said. I think it links, but also I've been really meaning to say that particular word. So trust. If you are creating a deliberate strategy and formalizing it to the point of it being more of a burden because you don't trust your employees, if that's the only reason you're doing a deliberate strategy, that is a problem. So this links to incorporating emergent strategy in the deliberate one, because emergent strategy requires comfort in the discomfort, resilience towards change, and trust. So, but most importantly, awareness. So emergence is already happening in the organization because, and I think this has been also mentioned in the comments, all decisions cannot be formalized. There is no way that there can be a formal procedure that will guide everything, because that would mean that humans are not necessary in the process. So emergence is happening. That is because all managers at all levels are actually making countless decisions every day based on their common sense and hopefully their alignment with the values and the goals of the organization. No matter how procedural do you get, there is still freedom to think, and there is still a requirement from managers to be problem solvers, to be flexible, to communicate really well, and to innovate. So those things mean that there is emergence happening. So the question is, how can you incorporate emergence in the organization? And I think Cristina touched on this point when she said that you don't have to like pick and choose and then just do that particular thing. The way that you incorporate it is by acknowledging that it already happens and strategically allocating resources to support it. So this would mean that the deliberate strategy that you have already can serve as a framework within which the people can innovate. So this means there are strong resource controls in place. So not everybody just starts innovating across all levels and being super flexible, but they have resource controls that help prioritizing the innovation or the trying out of opportunities to make sure that these experiments and these games based on curiosity are within scope. So they're not just innovating across the board, but they're innovating to reach the strategy. So when experiments in this situation don't bring the desired results, how do we know that they didn't? It's the deliberate strategy, no matter how small it is, but it's the deliberate strategy that is telling us whether our innovation reached the desired results or didn't. So just to repeat the key point, the way that you incorporate an emergent strategy in your deliberate strategy is by looking at the emergence that already happens, allocating resources, and being a strong and approachable leader to support it. That's how I would answer this question. Oh, and it's 11.
Yes, I noticed that we've reached technically the scheduled time, but I would like to take some questions because I noticed that many of the attendees joined us a bit later. So if you can still stay with us, please do so. But let's take at least 2 questions. So help us with what we have there in the chat.
Cristina, we have a really good one. Sorry, Luis, but I caught this one of what risks do we stand if we don't cascade from organizational to individual? I really
Go ahead. Go ahead, buddy.
It's TKI expertise. It's what we always do, and what we like. No matter what kind of program do you join for TKI, you are going to hear about the importance of cascading. And the consulting projects that we do are also heavily focused around ensuring this alignment. So the risk is, as we mentioned in case of deliberate strategy, the risk is that individuals day to day don't have a connection to the values and to the major goals of the organization. If they don't have a connection, as I said, emergence already happens. They make decisions, but those decisions are not in alignment. And that's the thing. No matter how good your formal strategy is, if the people don't make decisions based on it, on every level of the organization, it won't work. And how do we make sure that people make decisions based on it? By cascading and allocating targets, strategic initiatives to them that are already aligned with the strategy. Give the people a framework in which they can make decisions freely. So this cascading, if it goes wrong, all of those decisions all of those resources of that person is going to go to a different direction. That's how I would answer it. But Cristina, go ahead if you also.
Yeah, I agree with you. I was thinking whether there's any additional angle to look at it if we don't go to a full cascading of performance. I also look at it again as a process. So ideally, it should go all the way to individual level, but it can be a journey for the organization to move through this process in stages, right? And leave the cascading for individual level for, let's say, the last part of the maturity of the system in itself. Other risks that we stand is that there will not be much of an ownership in terms of what needs to be achieved. And also the role of the KPIs at individual levels or setting the expectations, it's not just for controlling. I see an important role of using KPIs to communicate Because when I tell you, I want our organization to expand its reach, it's generic. You don't know exactly what I mean by that. We can have a different interpretation. But when I define that to a particular KPI, I want us 25% market share in the US. That becomes specific. And when I take that and I explain to you what can you do to reach that, then I think it brings both productivity and happiness in the workplace. People want to perform, want to be valued, feel valued. And the KPIs are helping you to define clearly what you expect from them. And they're giving them a tool for self-assessment to begin with, until we get to the matter of appraisals, evaluations, and how we incentivize people. Shall we take another question? I haven't had a chance to scroll to the chat. So, Louise, I don't know.
Okay.
What other questions we have?
For the next one, let's go with Chris's question. So, how can leaders successfully achieve in monitoring and evaluation of strategy plan?
Can you please repeat? How can leaders
successfully achieve in monitoring and evaluating the strategy plan?
I think what I thought in talk, because I'm not sure what you mean by that. I can answer that. You can set the KPIs, but I'm not sure if that's the direction in which you're looking. Can you give us some context for your question, Chris? You can go ahead and unmute.
Chris?
Okay. So maybe that's not possible at the moment. Then I'll take the question as I understand it. If you want to ensure that your strategy plan is thoroughly monitored, then for sure you need to use KPIs. So your objectives, your strategy has to include 3 key elements. That is the strategic objectives, the KPIs associated to those objectives, and then you also need the strategic initiatives. You have to have this triangle in which you define what you want to do, the objectives, how you're going to measure that project KPIs, and how are you going to get there, how you're going to close the performance gap between where you are and your target by setting up the strategic initiatives. The more alignment you have between strategic initiative and the objectives, the more cohesive somehow the strategy plan can be. If you want a successful monitoring, first of all, you need to have the KPIs properly selected. And then you also need the right system in place, which means what I also see oftentimes is that organizations need to do a better job in terms of defining the different types of reporting that takes place. So you would like to have a certain regularity for strategic reporting, then for operational reporting, so that these cycles complement each other. For example, oftentimes we see the quarterly meeting to discuss strategy progress, and then you have the monthly reporting of the maybe operational performance. But in some cases, you can also have monthly reporting of corporate performance synchronized with maybe bi-weekly reporting at operational level. These characteristics also depend on the type of system, whether you automate it, not, and what you're using for reporting. But I think you need the KPI set in place. You need the reporting system to be rigorous and optimized so that it's easy for everyone to do it. Software solution would be nice. And you also need the KPI documentation form, very detailed on how you measure each KPI, from where is the data coming, and how you're going to do the calculation. And you have to do this before you activate them, so that you don't end up with KPIs that you're not sure how you have to calculate right now, but they need to be put in the report next month. So these 3 things: KPI documentation form, selection of KPIs, and the reporting. Selection, documentation, and reporting, to put it in a logic order.
All right, thank you. Do we have time for one more? Because we have a lot of questions on the chat. Okay.
Let's go with one more question.
Okay, one more question. So this one's from Tariq. So what are some strategies, tools, or methods that can be used to have high performance culture?
What are some strategies, tools, and methods that can be used to have a high performance culture? Oh wow, we have so many tools and techniques that we use. So the KPI documentation form is a must-have if you have a deliberate strategy and you want to have a high-performance culture. Because once again, it's more often than not, we select KPIs and then we go ahead and don't know how to measure them or why we are measuring them or what is their calculation formula, what is their objective, which objective is it linked to. So one tool that I want to mention is the KPI documentation form. A method that we use in deliberate strategies or a technique is clustering. I think I want to mention clustering because clustering of the indicators into different main categories starts to give you a system overview. So when you are looking at a KPI, it's a very micro view. When you're clustering them, and the balanced scorecard is a good way to cluster them into those 4 categories, it gives you a helicopter view. So what exactly are the main things that you want to focus on? And that can be, as the balanced scorecard says, financial, customer, internal processes, or learning. But it can be also other clusters, sustainability or corporate social responsibility, or maybe a cluster on communication. The thing is that when you cluster, and you can read about this in the Performance magazine. I think we wrote a bunch of articles on clustering. You get a bigger picture of the system. Of course, there are many others, so I just mentioned my personal favorites. Cristina, if you have personal favorites as well.
I was thinking about the question from a different angle. I was thinking about the question asked about how can you build a performance culture more on the people side. And for sure, first you have to have a performance management system in place so that we get the opportunity to work with KPIs and get into the habit of discussing and monitoring. But I will also like to mention that if you want to drive a high-performing culture, your system needs to have a good data transparency. I know that in many organizations, there are many layers of transparency, a lot of data that is being confidential. But then if you want more result-oriented individuals, you have to give them the KPIs and you have to give them access to data. Of course, some data remains only there for the CEO maybe, but it is important to ensure that data which is relevant for the operations that the employees are handling is available to them so that they can be aware of what's happening. So I would say data transparency. I think they need what you can do on a practical side. You can have a newsletter for strategy and performance updates in which you don't inform what's our strategy after the planning cycle one time per year, but throughout the year, you keep reiterating, you keep announcing people on a monthly basis, on a quarterly basis. This is our strategy, these are our objectives, this is how far we reach. I understand that in some companies or maybe the government area sector, you cannot share some of the results with everyone in the company. But I don't see anything stopping you for saying, we have reached this objective at 80%, right? Or our KPI has reached 90% or 70% of our target. You need to tell them where you are. So this newsletter of updates can work to increase awareness of employees on where we are, why we're doing it, and what matters. The more informed they are, the thousands of small decisions that we take every day and we cannot formalize in any manner, the more likely you are that they will be aligned to strategy execution. Where they're facing a work dilemma, they can take, sometimes not about right or wrong because it's contextual, but they can take the right decision to support strategy, or they can take the decision they think is right, but is actually detrimental to the strategy or to the objectives of the department. So invest in awareness and communication and transparency of data so that they can take decisions. And needless to say, leadership that is focused on growing the others and not succeeding by showing off the results of the team, but rather focus on growing the team and the individuals he's leading or she's leading.
And just one thing to add here. Basically, I want to pass back a question to the audience to think about it. You can also type it in the chat, but mostly to think about it. Is the corporate strategy in the organization where you are working now serving you in any way? How do you feel when you think about the corporate strategy? Is it something really bureaucratic that you have to do because you want a promotion, or is it something like, okay, I understand what we do here? Those are two very different sentiments, and one is performance culture, and the other won't be performance culture, no matter how many rules we put there. So employees, if they don't feel any connection to it, it won't be a performance culture. Okay, I'm also done.
Thank you very much for joining us today. It was a pleasure for us to be here. We are a few minutes past the scheduled time, but there were many questions that we received before the webinar, and there were some questions now as well that we didn't get the chance to address. So me and Bori are committed to taking the time until the end of the month and give you a brief opinion on the matter that you asked in writing. So you'll be hearing from us soon with a reply to the questions. Back to you, Luis, for closing.
All right, so we're in the end part of our presentation. So again, guys, thank you all for joining us in your active participation. I hope you found today's insight valuable and that you leave the new ideas and take it back to your organization. Again, if you want to deep dive into the topics that we've discussed, don't hesitate to explore our State of Strategy Management Practice Report 2024. It's available now. And on behalf of the KPI Institute and System, thank you again, and we look forward to seeing you at our future events. Any final words from our guests?
No, I just want to thank everybody as well, and all of these questions. They're really motivating us as well, I think, to think more about this, produce more content that might be helpful for you. So thank you again.
Cristina?
It was our pleasure to be here, and we're going to be sharing the recording along with the research study with everyone. I wish you a productive week. And best of luck with your planning process, with your annual planning process.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.